It is officially prom season. Here at the shop, we do a lot of formal alterations this time of year, and today I have to hem a prom dress. So these type of materials can sometimes be a little unruly to work with and cause some problems, but I have several tips and tricks to share that's going to make this a lot easier for you. So if you need to hem a prom dress, you are in the right place.
Here's what you need to get started. Some sewing pins, some all-purpose sewing machine thread that matches your dress, some nice sharp new needles, preferably these Microtex ones, some sharp sewing scissors, and you might need a seam ripper. First, we need to determine how much length is coming off of this dress. So you're going to need some pins, and you need your model to put on your dress. So here's our extra material all pulling on the floor, and we want to eliminate this extra material. So typically you want to shoot for your dress falling about a ½ inch above the floor. Anywhere from a ½ inch to 1 inch is going to be good. So here's a little trick that I like to do. First, you want to smooth down the dress. Make sure it's hanging straight. Make sure if you have side seams at the side, they're actually hanging to the side. That seam isn't skewing to the front or back. It's coming straight down the side. So now, then you're just going to take your hand like this, press the fabric to the floor, and then place a pin just right above where your finger is. And that's going to give you about ½ inch up off the floor. You can use a ruler if you want, or your sewing gauge, but this is my method. I like to use the width of my finger, and as long as you're consistent all the way around, that will be perfect. Just make sure it hangs nice and straight. Go all the way around the hem, and pin. Now we're going to begin plotting points of reference on the dress and taking their measurements. So points of reference might include at the slit, at the side seam, at the back seam, or at center front, which is marked with this pin. So each one of these points, we're going to take the measurement of the pin down to the original hem, and we're going to write it down with that point of reference. Center front, 1 inch. So just use your gauge to measure all the way around at these points of reference. So at the slit, I'll measure from the pin down to the original hem. We have 1 inch. Let's check the other side of the slit. From the pin to the original hem, we have 1 inch. So that's perfect. At slit, 1 inch. Then let's go between our 2 points. Okay, so between our slit and our center front, we have a couple other pins here. So let's measure this one. Okay, this is about 1.25 inches. This one here is about 3/4 inch. So since those are only 1/4 inch variation from these ones, I'm going to go ahead and leave all that as 1 inch. Let's move on to the side seam. So at the side seam, from the pin to the original hem is 2½ inches. Let's check the other side seam. Okay, so from the pin to the original hem is 2 inches. So I'm going to split the difference and make the side seams 2 1/4 inches. So here I have both of my side seams, and I want to determine how dramatically or how gradually this dip comes in. So I'm going to use my tape measure and measure in from the side seam along the original hem. So this pin here is about 6 inches towards the front from the side seam. So there's that one. Let's measure over here. 6 inches from this side seam towards the front is right about here where this pin is. So let's measure what these are. So this one is about 1.5 inches.
This one is also about 1.5 inches, so that's good. So we can write down 6 inches toward front from side seams, take 1.5 inches. Let's go to the back. This is our center back seam. So center back, 2.5 inches. We can write that down. Now if we examine this section from the side seam to the back seam, just out of curiosity, maybe they are all 2.5, since our side seam's 2, we're gonna make that 2 1/4. Let's see, what do we have here? We have 1.5 inches, about 1 3/4 inches, 2 inches, 2 1/4, and then we have 2.5 here. Let's go to the other side. Just checking what's happening before we write anything down, just so we know. Is it gradually changing or is it mostly the same? Okay, so we're going to do 2 1/4 for side seam, 2.5 at back seam. What's in between? We have 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches, and right here it looks like 2.5. So what I'm going to do for this case is kind of split the difference again. So we're going to keep the side seams at 2 1/4, keep the back seam at 2.5. I'm going to let the rest of the hem in the back dip down to 2 inches. So then all I need to figure out is how gradually or dramatically to dip that down from 2.5 down to 2. So let's see. From the back seam, we had 2.5, 2.5. So over here is our 2 inch. All the way over here, this yellow one was 2 inches. And then we have here, this is about 2 inches. So these look like a similar distance from the center back seam. Let's measure. So from center back to this one at the original hem, it's about 12 inches. Okay, and this one from center back to here. Again, it's about 12 inches, so this is good. So we can write down 12 inches from center back towards side seams, take 2 inches. So now that all these measurements are recorded, we can remove the pins, and we're going to start pressing up those measurements. So come to the inside of the dress at one of your points of reference. I'm going to start at the back seam. Now refer to your paper to know how much to take away from your back seam. Now look at your paper to know how much to take from the back seam. Mine's going to be 2.5 inches. So I set the slider on my sewing gauge, and I'm going to fold this up to where it looks like 2.5 inches and adjust until it is 2.5 inches. And press. And pin. Okay, the next point of reference that I have measured is 12 inches toward the sides from the back seam. So I'm going to measure along the original hem 12 inches toward the side. That will be right here. I will mark that with a pin just so we don't lose the spot. Okay, now that point is 2 inches. So I'll measure that up. Change my slider to 2 inches. Fold that point up to 2 inches. press, and pin. I'll just reuse that pin. So now between the 2.5 and the 2, a gradual increase is allowed to happen here. So if you were to measure anywhere between these points, it would go anywhere from 2 to 2.5. It wouldn't go under 2, it wouldn't go over 2.5. You can check. Right here's 2.25, that's perfect. I'm gonna assume this is all good. Hold it down, press, and pin. Okay, so that was 12 inches toward the side seam from the back going that direction. Let's go this direction. So 12 inches along the original hem is going to be right here. So at this point, our hem should be 2 inches. So fold it up to 2 inches. Press. You can use a tailor's clapper if you like. It helps tremendously. You can get those on our website. Pin. And then just allow this gradual increase to happen in between. Press. And pin. Okay, so the side seams should be 2.25 inches. So you can move your slider to 2.25. You have that nice visual arrow reference. It's easy to see when you folded it to the right amount. Okay. Press. And pin. And then we determined that most of the space between the side seam and the point of reference was going to be 2 inches. So slide back down to 2 inches and just check a few points along this length. 2 inches. 2 inches. Press. And let's check here. Two inches. Press and pin. Move from the side seam towards the front. Remove the old pins. Okay, here is our at slit point. That's going to be 1 inch. But you can see it's connected to some other layers. So we will have to get the seam ripper here and separate these layers from each other. But since we're only removing 1 inch and This looks like it's only an inch. We can make that fold happen before we rip. So I'll go ahead and press that. Okay, so we know we're removing 1 inch from the point at the side slit. We're removing 1 inch from most of this section, and then at the side seams it turns into 2 1/4. Our next point of reference is 6 inches toward the front from the side seam. So let's measure 6 inches along the original hem. Here's that point. Mark it with a pen. And that point should have a hem of 1.5 inches. Measure, press, and pin. Let's just allow this little gradual increase to happen here. And we know from this point to here is 1 inch, so we'll just allow a gradual decrease here. Okay, so here's center back. We moved to this point here, and then we went the other direction. So now we're going to go here to the side seam. Okay, the side seam should be 2 1/4. Now from that side seam of 2 1/4 to this point of 2 inches, I'm just going to allow a gradual decrease. If you want to check, you can make sure that it never goes over 2 inches, and that ideally it stays between 2 inches and 2 1/4 at any point. Okay, so now we'll go from the side seam, and here's our front panel, the last section we have to hem. Take out these extra pins. This is our center front marking pin, so I'm going to leave that one. Okay, so the next point is from the side seam, 6 inches toward the front. So we'll find that point by measuring along the original hem here. 6 inches. Here's that point. Mark it with a pin. And that hem should be 1.5 inches at that point. Okay, so the rest of our points are center front and at slit, and this is all 1 inch. So I'm going to start with the center front. Fold that to 1 inch. And just let a gradual taper happen from the 1 inch to the 1.5 inch. If you want to measure, just make sure it never goes over 1.5 inches. 1 inches, it never goes under. And press. Where I will press and pin 1 inch up, but I will have to take it out temporarily to rip this. But since we're here, we'll go ahead and do it and make the crease line, and it'll be ready to go. And 1 inch all the way across. Now I'm going to do the same thing for all the other layers that I just did. But first I am going to rip apart this section at the slit on both sides like I talked about. So I'm going to temporarily remove this pin that's holding my hem I just pressed up. And we're going to take all these and fold them to one side so we can see the stitching that is attaching them. and we're going to rip that out just enough that we have enough to work with. That our shortest layer we can fold up by 1 inch and then some extra. So we just need to rip to about right here. So just take your seam ripper and find those stitches that are holding all 3 layers together. And we'll just start removing those so we can get each layer free. There, now that all 3 layers are free, I'll just fold my hem back up and put the pin back in, and I'm going to repeat what we just did for the other 2 layers. Position your dress under the presser foot so that the fold is on top. So we're working on the wrong side, and we're just going to start here at the slit. I'm going to start in just a little bit so that I can back up to the beginning and then go forward. And we're going to stitch just really close to this folded edge here. So maybe 1/8 of an inch or less. And I have my machine set to a straight stitch with a length of 3. So here we go, back stitch and forward. Take out pins as you go. And just imagine a line right here up against that folded edge. Sew all the way to the end and then do a back stitch. Now that you've sewn down the whole hem, we're going to cut off the excess material. So you'll want to get some nice sharp sewing scissors and just clip as close as you can to those line of stitching without clipping through the other side and without clipping through your stitches. Just like that. And if you need to get some nice sharp scissors, I did not include those in the Sewing Basics Toolkit bundle, but we have the Ginger bent trimmers, and those are my favorite sewing scissors. So if you get on our website, you can find the Ginger sewing shears. That's what they're listed as, I believe. And you can add those to cart along with your Sewing Basics Toolkit bundle. So we're just going to go all the way around, clipping off all the extra. Once you've cut off all the excess fabric, we're going to now roll or fold what we just cut, like this. And we're just going to roll as we sew. And we're trying to make a very tiny narrow hem So we only want to fold it the least amount that we can fold it. So right along that cut edge, just like this. And you'll see me as I go, I'll kind of keep pushing with this hand, my left hand, I'll keep pushing it this way so that I'm making sure that it is only folded the least amount that it can fold. I don't want anything to be like that. I want it like that. Oh, maybe I'll stick a pin. Let it stay. Start in just a little bit, starting with a back stitch. And then I'll go forward. Sometimes you have to help it at the beginning when there's nothing for it to grab onto. When you come to seams like this, you might need to give it a gentle tug from behind to help it make it over the bulk of that seam. I'm just going to try to tuck in this little corner here, fold that over, go all the way to the end and end with a back stitch. Here's our narrow hem and it looks really good. You can give it another press just to make it look even better. And now I have 2 more layers that are going to take the narrow hem, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same steps on those other 2 layers. If yours is like mine and you had several layers that were attached and we had to rip open, now we can reattach them. So just go ahead and find where all 3 of them are laying flat together and just lay them in a stack like they were. Put a few pins. And then you'll go over to your machine and you'll sew right here, and then you'll flip this layer over and stitch that down one more time. So if you have that optional step, go ahead and complete that, and then you are all done. Alright my friends, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. I hope that was helpful for you. If it was, please give my video a like. If you tried this and you hemmed a prom dress, I would love to know how it went. So please go down below and leave me a comment. And if you had any additional questions, leave those down below too. Any tips for the community, leave those down there too. We want to hear all of it. And please don't forget to subscribe to our Pin Drop Shop channel. This way you won't miss out on future episodes. So we're going to be doing a lot of prom alterations over the next few weeks. So if that's the kind of content that you're going to need, this is the place. Also, if you need to pick up any kind of sewing supplies, head to our website, shoppindrop.com. You can find all the basics there, or you can get them all together, bundled and discounted on the Sewing Basics Toolkit Bundle. So find that on our website, shoppindrop.com. Thank you so much again for watching, my friends, and until next time, happy sewing!